Well, we've gotten on to the Demihumans, friends, and the first one in the list is the dwarf. The hardy, sturdy dwarf that everybody plays with a Scottish accent. Here we go. This is my horrible Scottish accent. The dwarves are a dying race. Now I just sound like Sean Connery. Once the most powerful people on the planet, their decline has left them a spiritually shattered people. I can't do this. That's fucking lame. Once they took great pride in their great grand architecture, their technological supremacy, and loved each other just as hard as they worked. Yet they did not change with the world. And as the rest of the world's inhabitants came into their own, the dwarfs retreated into subterranean fortresses, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know what a dwarf is, then you suck. So get with the program. Read this on your own time. Why would you make a dwarf in Lamentations of the Flame Princess? Well, they're pretty sturdy, like fighter level sturdy. They have some pretty decent saves for certain things. And I guess flavor, you might want to play something different than a human, which is probably why they're included in this book. Although my understanding that a lot of the content for Lamentations is basically supposed to take place in like 17th century, like Renaissance era Europe of a different timeline. So I don't know what a dwarf would be there, or maybe they just wouldn't, for that matter. Dwarves are able to bear incredible burdens. It takes 5 additional items for a dwarf to gain the first encumbrance point. Oh, that's why you make a dwarf, so that you could carry all the treasure and weapons. A dwarf receives a +1 bonus to his con modifier. Nice. Bonus hit points. Sturdy. A dwarf also continues to apply his con modifiers, if any, to hit points gained after level 9. So that goes back to that almost as tough, maybe as tough as a fighter, or tougher. But on the far right of their column is architecture. Dwarves get architecture. To start off with, they have a 3 and 6. And by 4th level, it moves up to a 4 and 6. And by 7th level, if you should live that long, it moves up to 5 and 6. And by 10th level, it's 6 and 6. So innately, dwarves have architecture. Now, I guess that kind of means that in a balanced party, a dwarf could cover the architecture skill, which frees up points for a specialist to focus on other things. So maybe that's another consideration about why you make a dwarf, because they can cover some of the necessary skills for adventuring, like carrying a lot of crap and being hardy. And, dwarves generally make like great partners in combat and in drinking and celebration. So a lot of things to consider there in terms of dwarves being valuable. So I like that. Moving on in the demi-human world, we have elves. Once the epitome of enlightenment and responsibility, elven civilization has fallen before the expansive nature of man. Where once the elf nations ruled the forests, the plains, and the mountains, there now small numbers live in secret enclaves, possessing great power, blah, 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 blah. So you know the routine. Elves live a long time. They're smart, they're swift, they're deft, all those things. They're a little bit squishy, kind of like a magic user, but they do have magic also like a magic user. Not as powerful as a magic user, but they get spells, and they get the search skill. So that kind of harkens back to this idea that elves are more perceptive or more attuned to their surroundings than other people. They have a keen eye for detail, which is now mechanically implemented in their ability to use search at a more than basic 1 in 6 level. And they're less often surprised than other races. Okay, so they have a 1 in 6 chance, basically, to not be surprised. Okay. And then in the magic section, they go over the details about elves and their spells, access to spells. So that's cool. So again, maybe in a flavor connotation, you want an elf in your party because that elf kind of represents, a fighter who can be swift. Or maybe you make your elf the archer. If your elf has like high dexterity and a decent intelligence, they can shoot arrows and cast spells and search. So all of those are okay reasons to make an elf. All right, moving on to the halfling. Halflings are curious creatures who are popularly known as creatures of leisure, but there's far more to them than that, usually standing about 3 feet tall. All other physical features of halflings will differ by region, but one never varies. They have large, hairy feet and prefer to go barefoot. They're hobbits, let's just say that. I mean, they can't say that in any game anymore because lawsuits, but that's what they are. Halflings are very quick and agile folk, and so add 1 to their dex modifier and receive a 1-point bonus to armor class when not surprised. Makes sense. They're a smaller target to hit, and they're fast, they're deft, they're agile. In the wilderness, halflings have the uncanny ability to stay hidden, and so have a 5 in 6 stealth check in the wilderness. That's pretty cool. Because on top of all of that, you guys, they start off with bushcraft. Just like the dwarves have architecture, the halflings have bushcraft. And they start off with a 3 in 6 at first level, which is amazingly dope. And the book here describes that due to halfling society being traditionally in harmony with nature. So now, the one penalty is their size. Due to their size, halflings cannot use large weapons and must use medium weapons two-handed. I mean, there are some mechanical incentives to considering demihumans. I think in a balanced party, right, where you had one person playing every one of these classes, that would be 7 players at your table, right? Fighter, cleric, magic user, specialist, elf, dwarf, halfling. Yeah, 7 people at your table. And I don't know, that's a lot of people for some groups. Some groups are used to playing with like 4. But in a game like this, it might behoove you, if your referee can handle it, to have a big hardy group of like 7 people, maybe 6, because that way you're going to be a little more balanced. And plus, I will say this, suppose that you have that big group and you have, a halfling, an elf, and you have a dwarf covering some of those skill sets, then the specialist can focus even more so on the other skills that aren't covered by those demi-human races. So that's just a quick overview of Demihumans in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. If you have any great ideas that I missed, and I'm sure I did, and you want to share those in the comments, tell us how you have effectively used elves, dwarves, or halflings in your games of Lamentations, or if you think they suck, please share that as well, because we need your wisdom in this community, and whether we like it or not, we're going to listen to you, and I will listen to you and read your comments and absorb your knowledge and wisdom, and someday I'll kill you and become the king. Just kidding. All right, happy playing, and see you on the next episode. I don't have my plate mail armor and my spiked helmet, so we're just going to roll through this pretty quick.
What are you supposed to be with that on?
I'm supposed to be a dwarf lord. I know, I look